The Trent Center for Aging in Society presents the Anishinaabe Indigenous Intergenerational Growing Old Aging Gathering, or AIIGO. On January 15th, 2025, the AIIGO was created to provide a space for First Nations community members and scholars to share their wisdom and research about growing old or aging with a receptive audience of both Indigenous and settler attendees. The gathering featured a keynote panel of 3 Anishinaabe of Hiawatha and Curve Lake First Nations, Sandra Moore, Ann Taylor, and Bailley Taylor. Dr. Nadine Changfoot, Director of the Trent Center for Aging in Society, and Alice Olson-Williams, Menajima Kwe, Women Who Tells Good Stories, asked the panelists if they would share a story of growing old aging intergenerationally in their communities. These are some of their stories. First speaking will be Sandra Moore. Sandra Moore has spent 30 years working for Anishinaabe people in various capacities before retiring as Chief of Hiawatha First Nation in 2012. She is a renowned creator and teacher of Anishinaabe artwork. She lived in Dawson City, Yukon from 2016 to 2017, serving as Director of Health and Social Services for the Trondak-Huetchin Self-Governing Nation. She serves as counselor on the Hiawatha First Nation elected council.
So I don't have one story. I have a bunch of little stories. And the stories I want to share with you are about things that I learned. So it's not even necessarily about growing up in a First Nation community or as a First Nation kid, but they're stories that that talk about what I learned and how I learned them. And I really feel like so much of what I learned as a kid, I kind of learned in a backhanded kind of way. Like I saw things or felt things or knew things that weren't okay. And so I learned from that as opposed to learning the direct lesson. So the first thing I want to talk about is I learned that being laughed at didn't have the best feeling attached to it. I remember, I don't know how old I would have been, 3 or 4 maybe, and I came into my mom and dad's house and I talked about something about the door, only at the time I pronounced it doy. And the whole kitchen, whoever was in the kitchen that day, there was a bunch of people there, they all laughed because of the way I said door. And I learned, it didn't affect me enough that I went away crying, but I learned that didn't feel really great. And I never said doy again. So that was another part of the learning for me. And I learned from that laughing with is far better than laughing at. And so I think I've worked my life in a way now that if I'm going to create a laugh, it's going to be with, it's not going to be at anybody or anything. And so I think that's an important lesson to have. So the second thing, or the next thing that I learned was from an uncle. And he wasn't really an uncle, but we called him uncle. He was my dad's cousin. And he was in the room the day that I got laughed at about saying doy. But that same uncle, my very most favorite uncle in the world, when he came to visit my parents, I knew that he came to visit mom and dad, but he always took time to stop and say, hey, Sam, what's going on? What are you doing these days? What are you interested in? What are you learning in school? And as I grew older, that didn't ever change. Like, what are you making these days? Do you need any fur? Can I bring some furs to you? So the questions and the interest and the expression of love from my uncle never ended until he passed. Like even when I was a kid, I realized that makes me feel really important. It made me feel really good that somebody cared enough that I knew he came to visit mom and dad, but he took time to visit all of us kids. And so I really respected that. And now when I have visitors come to my house, if they have kids, I don't mean to be rude to the parents, but I'm almost always exclusively going to be visiting the kids. Right? I want the kids to know that what they're doing and who they are is important. And so it's nice to see their mom and dad, but boy, am I going to visit with those kids. I learned about sacrifice and I learned about love as a kid. I remember when I was 8, 9, maybe 10, we would want to go skating on Saturday night at the arena in Keene. And it was a little bit of a drive to get there. I think it's about 7 miles from Hiawatha to Keene. It was a little bit of a drive, and that would cost money for gas. It cost a little bit of money to get into the arena to go skating, and of course, we always wanted a treat. And I knew, even as a little kid, that my parents didn't have money to take us to the arena, to pay our way in, and to give money for a treat. But my dad would always reach into his pocket and he'd say, here, yeah, we can do that. You can go skating, I'll take you. And he would give us enough money to pay our way in and to have a treat. And I don't know what my dad went without that week, but I knew as a kid that that was all the money he had. And he gave it to us. And that was about sacrifice. I don't know if he could buy himself a pack of cigarettes. I don't know what that meant for him. I never asked him that. But I learned that that was about what he was willing to sacrifice because of his love for us. I learned about hard work. I learned that I never had time to just sit down and read a book in the summer. There was always work to do. And so I learned that hard work taught me also to be able to go up to people and shake their hand, say hello, introduce myself, make conversation, ask how they are, how did you travel? Did you have a good journey? How have you been since last year? So I learned, as a young person, I learned about interacting with people. I learned about the value of being a team player, because all of us kids had all of that work to do all of the time. I learned from all of those experiences as a kid that being nice to people got you much more than being a nasty little right? I learned that I could get more from my parents. I could work them if I was nice to them, rather than to be that nasty little daughter. I learned that the rules were different for me than they were for my older siblings. So there's 7 of us kids and I'm the youngest. And so the older ones always say, oh, you're just so spoiled. You've been spoiled your whole life. But I don't think that's it. I think by the time I was older and starting to do things in life, Mom and Dad were just tired of implementing the rules. When my oldest sister got married, the night before her wedding, she had to be home at 10 o'clock. But I was 6 at the time. So then when I was in grade 12 and I was going off to my grade 12 prom, I said to Mom, I don't know, I'll be home maybe by 3. She's like, that's fine. And so my siblings say, oh, you were so spoiled. No, they just got tired of implementing rules. My mom knew at that point that she didn't have to stay awake and listen for me to come in. She knew I would get home eventually, in whatever condition that might be. She knew I would be home. And so she went to sleep. I remember her saying to my older brother in particular, saying to him, I stayed awake and listened for you to come in. Don't think I didn't hear you. I heard you come in at 2:30 in the morning. It didn't matter if I came in at 3 from my prom. Just the rules changed. Mom and Dad changed. So if you're young and you've got young children, you'll have rules for your first one. You'll have less for your second one. You'll have less than that for the next one. By the time the 7th child comes along, there are no rules. I say to people today, I'm the youngest of 7 kids. Rules do not apply to me. So my dad was chief in our community for 23 years, from just before I was born until 1976. And I remember as a young kid watching my dad speak in front of the community, speaking in front of groups, speaking in front of very large groups, and thinking, oh my God, I wish I could do that. I learned that you have to be careful what you wish for. Because I've done that. I am the speaker. I'm the speaker in our family. Hey, Joe? of my siblings, and I'm the speaker. My oldest sister has now called me up and said, when I die, will you say my eulogy? So you have to be careful what you wish for. I learned we're never too old for a new adventure. I remember the reaction of my kids when I said, I'm applying for a job in Dawson City, and if I get it, we're going to go to Dawson for a year. I had already gone to the Yukon. I was already there, and I phoned my kids and said, so I'm on my way to Dawson City. I'm flying up there from Whitehorse, and I'm going for a job interview tomorrow and I've applied for this job, and if I get it, Dad and I are going to move here for a year. So you're never too old for an adventure. The last thing I want to talk about is you're never too old to reinvent yourself. You know, when I was a kid in school and I was learning art, it was fun, but in public school, I didn't have a choice. I had to do whatever was being taught. And then when I went to high school, I looked at art and thought, I don't really want to learn that. I don't really want to do that. I don't think I can do that. I have no interest in doing that. And then when I started to learn our own people's art, I learned to do porcupine quill and birch bark art. I learned to do fish scale art and caribou hair tufting and other arts that are our people's art. Then I was in love, and then I reinvented myself. And today, I not only do those arts, but I teach those arts because my goal is to keep them alive. I only have, like if this is my lifeline, I'm closer to this end of it now than that end. And my goal is to teach as many people as I can before I get to the very end of this line. While you're alive, live.
Speaking next is Ann Taylor. Ann Taylor is a Curve Lake First Nations member. She is Anishinaabe knowledge holder. She is the Indigenous Education Advisor for the PVNC Catholic School Board. She is formerly the Curve Lake Community Anishinaabemowin Coordinator, and she is a renowned artist, filmmaker, and curator.
Let me tell you about my grandparents. First, because I think it's important for you to know how incredible they are. And second, because Bailey's my little cousin, and she didn't get to spend as much time. She got to know my granny, but she never got to know our papa, and she never got to know our great granny. And those are the ones that I want to talk to you about. I am one of the very fortunate people who got to live with my grandparents. I grew up in a home without my father, and we lived in a tiny, tiny little house. I live right beside it now. And that's because of the generosity of my Auntie Rhonda, who is more like my sister than my auntie. And my Auntie Rhonda, Bailey's mom. We lived in a little 2-room house. There was my granny and my papa, my mom, my brother, me, my Uncle Pete, my Auntie Harriet, my Auntie Rhonda, sometimes my Auntie Audrey and her kids, sometimes my Uncle Chief and my Auntie Rose, sometimes my Uncle Boo. So there were a lot of us in a 2-room house. The house was a kitchen and a bedroom. We didn't have running water. We didn't have electricity, but we had a lot of love. From my Granny Gladys, I learned about my culture. I learned about how important it is to know our language. She taught me about our history, and she taught me to be strong. From my papa, I learned about the land and I learned about the water. He would get me up first thing in the morning before the sun came up. He'd go out and he'd start the wood stove. And then he'd help me get dressed and he'd say, come on, babe, we're gonna go on the rounds. So we'd walk through the woods, through the path, and I'd ask him a million questions about things. And he always took the time to answer. I must have got him to cook probably 1 million fish. My cousin Bud and I, we hung around together all the time. And Papa always told us, if you catch them and you clean them, I'll cook them for you. So we ate tons of perch and little rock bass, little green bass that my Papa would cook for us. But we had to clean them, we had to gut them, and we had to scale them. So I learned a lot from them about things. I learned a lot about love. And I moved from their house into a little house. My mom finally got a house from the reserve, and we moved in there. Again, we didn't have any running water. We didn't have any electricity. And again, it was a two-room house, a kitchen and a bedroom. And so my Auntie Puck needed a place to stay because her family was growing. So my mom and I, we moved in with my great granny, which was the best thing I can ever think of. My great granny was born in 1876, and she was old when we moved in with her. She still did all of her own work. She didn't have hydro. She didn't have running water. She cut her own wood. She'd bring it in the house. She'd get her own water. She did everything herself. And she was an amazing woman. When I moved in with her, I was in grade 3, just going into grade 3. I was probably grade 2. And what I learned from my Granny Liza was about kindness. She was the kindest person I've ever met in my life. And every day she had people who would stop by and visit her because she was old, but she was kind and she was generous. Every day she'd have people come. And when I was there, I was lucky enough to be able to sit there and listen. And my job was to make sure that they each had a cup of tea and maybe a slice of cake or a slice of pie, whatever Granny had in the warming oven. And I got to listen to the stories, particularly of the old people in my community. But I got to listen to their stories. And the thing about Granny Liza is that she took care of people in the community. If she needed things done, like if she needed wood chopped, or if she needed wood piled into the woodshed, or if she needed a building added on, like a little lean-to, she'd barter with people in our community. And she always did that with the people in the community who needed the money the most. And Granny didn't have a lot of money. She mostly bartered. She had her old age pension. That was it. That's all she had. But there were people in our community that had less than even she had. And so she'd ask them, could you come and pile wood for me on Thursday, and I can pay a little bit of money and I can bake you a pie. And that's what she did for people. And my favorite part of living with Granny was Christmas morning, because she'd get up about 4 and she'd start the fire in the wood stove. And her house could probably fit in here maybe 4 or 5, 6 times. Her house was real small. But Christmas morning, she'd start the fire in the summer kitchen, and about 5 people would start showing up. They'd come to visit. And Gran would get a great big gallon jug of wine. And so all the people in the community, and at that time when I was that young, we had a lot of problems with alcohol in our community. A lot of people were alcoholics, and they were all really good people. And they'd come and visit Granny, and she'd give them one little glass each of wine, but they'd sit there and they'd visit. And it was so beautiful because it would be filled with laughter and joy and love, and the stories would keep going. And it didn't matter who it was who'd come to visit. Granny always had something to share with them. If she ran out of wine, she always had tea, so she'd give tea. And the visits went on for hours every Christmas morning. And it was the most beautiful thing. And I got to be a part of that. That's one of my favorite memories of my Granny. But I also want to tell you about my Granny's death, because it was beautiful. And I know that people fear death. That's a natural reaction. I don't fear death because of my Granny. When she got really old, like 101, she decided that it was her time. She wanted to die. It was shortly after my cousin Bud had passed away, and that took a lot out of my Granny. She just decided, she told us all, she said, I don't have anyone to talk about the old times with. Everybody's gone now. And so I think maybe it's my time to go. So Granny called everyone aside. Each one of us went in to talk to her, and we each went in on our own. And there were only 2 of us kids that got called in. And when Granny would call us in, She gave us our instructions for our life, what we were supposed to do. I was pretty young when she did that. And I did what she told me to do. She told me to take care of my mom. That was something I wanted to do anyway. My dream was always to take care of my mom, to live with my mom always. I got to do that. But when Granny was dying, she died in the most beautiful way. She had all of her faculties. She never suffered from any dementia, ever. Her mind was as clear the day that she died as when she was 20. And when she died laughing. She died talking to her mom and her dad and her husband. They had come to meet her when she was dying. And when she died with her arms wide open, and she died laughing and talking to them. And to me, that is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. I can't imagine anything more beautiful. And for a woman who had lived her entire life giving to people and sharing with people, it was the most beautiful gift for our Creator to give her the next step into the next life that way. It was the most beautiful thing. That's the biggest thing I learned from my granny is you don't have to fear what's coming. It's going to come anyway. So you might as well go out laughing and talking to people in your own language, talking to those you love. What a beautiful way to end this life, to go out with a smile on your face, with your arms wide open, and talking to those that you love in your own language. How beautiful is that? That's the dream of everybody. Everybody should get to experience that. So I'm one of the lucky ones. I got to live with my grandparents, and how lucky is that? And I wish that for everybody.
Speaking last is Bailley Taylor. Bailley Taylor is a Curve Lake First Nation member. She is a proud mother. She is business owner of KS Custom Dreams. She is the drug and alcohol prevention worker for the National Native Alcohol and Drug Abuse Program. She is a teacher of Indigenous Studies at Fleming College.
So what I want to share is I've had a very interesting childhood. I have an Indigenous mother. I've been born and raised on the reserve, very close with her family, but I have a non-Indigenous father. And in my Indigenous part of my life, the family is very important to us. I'm very, very close with my one sister who I share with both of my parents. Most people think that she's my auntie or my sister because we're so close. I always say my second mom is my Auntie Puck, and the man that raised me was my papa. And if there's anything that all of them at the same time actually taught me is to not be scared of aging. I've never been scared to get old, and that's an interesting thing because on my dad's side of the family, he is still scared of being old, and he is old. Like, acceptance is key eventually. All of my sisters from him, he'll do anything not to age. But there's one thing that I'm not scared of. It's to get old. And I actually am excited to one day hopefully become a grandparent because, grandparents are amazing. And the love that my mom has for my son is something I didn't even get to experience. My mother is an amazing mother, but the way that she is as a grandmother just makes me so excited to be a grandparent. And in order for me to be a grandparent, that means I need to age. And I'm not worried about that by any means, because everyone in my family that I grew up with taught me that aging is beautiful. The more that we age, the more that we learn, and the more that we can help people, the more that we can do things. My dad's side of the family, they're not very close. It's very interesting how different things have been in my life. My dad's side of the family, they're not close with each other. They don't really care to be with each other, where I couldn't imagine not seeing you all the time. I'm very close with my family, and it's really important that I ensure that my son is as well. So my mom's been enjoying retirement. She's been helping me a lot with my child. I'm a single mother, but I don't feel like one by any means, because my mom is there to help me all along the way and teach my son things that I could never even teach him myself, just the same way that I was raised by not only my mother, because my dad worked a lot. I was raised by my papa. He was like my dad. My son is actually named after him. And my auntie Puck, who is still the most amazing woman in my life. I'm so close with. She is my second mom, and she's raised me and taught me things that my mom could never have taught me. I know how to sew and to make my own clothes and to be kind and cautious of life because my Auntie Puck, my papa taught me things like, he always take me out fishing. And I remember being younger and learning how to pluck ducks, and just, he was a foster parent. So he taught me how to love kids that were not your own. I have lots of cousins that are not blood related, but it doesn't matter because they were raised with us. But all of these people that were in my life, if there's one thing that they all taught me, is to not be scared of getting old. It's a blessing. All the things that you can do and learn in this world, like I was able to be born and raised on the reserve, and amazing childhood. I learned so much, and so many different people had a hand in raising me. I got to grow up and experience the outside world, then moving home, right? Everywhere that you can move, I never felt like home for me. I always knew eventually I'd make my way back to Curve Lake, and I did. And I have my son. I'm raising my son on the reserve, close to his cousins. He's an only child, and it's going to stay that way. But he's very close to his cousins. It's just how I was. My mom's around to help raise him. Unfortunately, I lost my papa a couple years ago, but he'll always remember him, and I'll make sure of that. And that's one thing that I remember is I never forgot what my granny looked like. I never forgot what she sounded like. Nobody stopped talking about that. Like people that are passed in the Indigenous culture, we don't stop talking about them. I'm going to cry. But in the Western culture, from like my dad's side, they do. They stop. Once someone's gone, a lot of people forget. And that's not good for the generations under us, because how are they supposed to know who we are and where we came from? You don't discuss your family and have an understanding of everything. Oh, I hate how emotional I am. And if it wasn't for people like Anne and my mom, my Auntie Pop telling me about all these amazing stories, I wouldn't understand who I am. And if there's one thing that I don't understand, is who I am from my dad's side. Sorry. I'm an emotional person, because I'm allowed to be. If there's anything that my family from my mom's side taught me, is it's okay to have emotions, where my Western side on my dad's side, it's absolutely not. So if there's anything that I can teach people, is maybe don't hide things, allow people to express themselves, teach people about where you're from and your grandparents and things that you remember. If it's not happy memories, share those memories and explain why you're breaking the generational cycle, the generational trauma. My son's father is from Alderville, but I'm very attentive to make sure that he is involved in his dad's life and that side of the family, because that's something I didn't have, and I know that that's a void in my life. But people like you, I know, sorry. This is why I don't do this stuff. I'm a very emotional person. I cry a lot. I cry when I'm happy and when I'm mad and when I'm sad. I express myself with tears, and I make people feel awkward. Don't worry, I feel awkward too. But that also comes from not being able to express myself because of that non-Indigenous side. They're not good at expressing themselves, and I was never allowed to. My day job, I'm a NAIDOP worker, so I'm an addictions worker. You see how much I cry there. And if there's also one thing that I've learned from doing that for the past 5 years, is that there's good in every single person, even when you think that there isn't. If there's anything I'm thankful for, it's my Indigenous side teaching me that no, there's good in those people, and they just need help, and they just need someone to listen to them. And because I've been able to have people listen to me and guide me and teach me so many different ways. I'm just so thankful to be able to have that strong connection to my culture and to not be scared to age, because I find too many people spend so much time worried about getting older and not living their life. And then that's when the regret comes in. And the next thing you know, you're regretting not doing anything. So I think it's really important to not be scared to age and have an understanding that you do have a duty in this world because there's kids watching you all the time. Like this beautiful little girl here, she's watching us. She's listening to everything. She's a sponge right now. And eventually she's going to be one of the people sitting here raising kids, remembering these things, and just realize that you're going to make an impression on little minds. And it's going to stay for a long time. Live a good life, be a good person. And yeah, aging is a beautiful thing. It's a blessing. And everything that we get to do from childhood to, you know, raising my own son now and eventually hopefully becoming a grandparent myself. I really look forward to those things. And it's because of my Indigenous culture that has taught me that it's going to be okay. It's a beautiful thing. I can't wait. I can't wait. Actually, I got my first, I don't mean to brag, but I got my first white hair like a month ago. And I've been showing everybody because I'm so excited to have long, beautiful white hair, just like all the photos that I've seen of Greg Liza. But yeah, don't be scared to age because it's going to happen, but also realize that it is going to happen. So don't make any regrets along the way because it happens fast. Thank you.
This podcast has been brought to you by the Trent Center for Aging in Society, produced by Matthew Deshaw and Nadine Changfoot. Miigwech, and thank you for tuning in.